Alrighty. So hopefully this works this time. So this is my final project presentation for AGRO 488, Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Management. So my project as throughout the semester has been this Renegade Brewing project. I chose option number one, the creation of a minimum viable product and trying to get some sales out of it. So I figured let's start getting into it. So with my minimum viable product creation, I made a exploratory batch of a summertime beer. I know it was hopeful thinking with all the cold weather and everything these past couple weeks. So that was intended to be ready for spring break. And so the idea was to sell some beer that would be ready for the spring break season, where students would be either enjoying the warmer weather of the spring season or going someplace besides Nebraska that for the spring breaks, whether it be like Arizona or Texas or something. So what I did was I brewed some beer in my basement using a 5-gallon home brewing bucket. The beer is brewed over the course of four weeks, with 2 weeks in the fermentation bucket, as seen here. This is the bucket, this is the airlock for it, and then 2 weeks resting in bottles, kind of curing the beer. So what I did, I had 5 gallons of beer produced, which is about 50 beers, 50 12 fluid ounce beers. I bottled the beers into recycled Boulevard beer bottles, and I used brand new caps for the bottles. I sold the beer in 6-packs, so 6 beers together. So here's a picture of the beer when it was ready to rock. So I had the box here with the beer in it. I had a little. I recycled other beer boxes that I had. So this is a 6-pack box. Here's the logo that I printed on it, and then I printed some labels for the beer bottles themselves. This is a picture of some of the beer actually poured out. So for the beer, it was the ingredients included Cascade hops, wheat, malt barley, Safale US 05 ale dry yeast, some priming sugar. So all these ingredients were included in like a beer extract kit, ready to go, kind of a wheat beer kit that I was able to acquire. So looking into this just plain wheat beer, I wanted to kind of summer it up a little bit for the warm season. So I made it into a shandy instead of just beer. So I added some Nebraska honey from a local grower named Rebecca Young. And then I used some orange peels to kind of zest up the beer a little bit. And so I had it turned into a wheat penny shandy instead of just a wheat beer. Overall, my cost for this, or my initial investment, was $30. My equipment, I feel that I've reached depreciation on it. So for this case study, we're just going to look at the cost of the ingredients used. So for my strategy, as I said earlier, I'm targeting college students about to take off for spring break. Hopefully with the warmer weather, they would be more interested in a warm weather beer. So what I did was I marketed my beer using some extra beer samples. So as I said earlier, I was using 6-packs of beer. So like I said, there's 50 beers, or about 50. So 53 is what you get out of 5 gallons, 53 beers equivalents. But only 48 of those beers are able to go into 6-packs just based on how many you can actually fit in a 6-pack. So that's 5 beers extra. So I use those as as extra beer samples. So obviously less than a beer size, so less than a 12-ounce sample. I was able to market and promote the product that way by distributing samples and just kind of getting some general vibes on the beer too. So after I gained some interest for the beer, whether the person that trying it really liked it or not, I was able to sell the 6-pack for $8.50. I use Venmo as my money transferring system, mostly so I didn't have to deal with change or cash or anything like that. So for the sales, I sold 7 of the possible 8 6-packs to college students, all age 21 and up. I carded everyone. And I bought one for myself because I wanted some, because all my samples ran out. I ran out of samples. I wanted some of this for myself too. So effectively, I've bought 8 6-packs at $8.50. So all 8 were sold for $68. So my revenue minus inputs, as you can see here, is $38 at the end of the day, with a 127% return on investment. It's really good, looks really good, but that's just looking at the ingredient investment. So kind of looking back, like on a reflection of the whole process and whole, so it took a lot of marketing to get people to buy this beer. Many college students feel that craft beer is really expensive. I was going door to door. I couldn't sell this on UNL campus because UNL is a dry campus. So I ended up just kind of marketing mostly to my friends and other college students that live by in the Hilltop and Indigo neighborhoods. So I tried to sell it that way, kind of going door to door as a beer salesman. It was also kind of cold that week, so summer and warm beer is really hard to sell in the cold, especially when it's raining or flooding or something out. People aren't really like, "Oh, I really want warm season beer." And a lot of students were like still thinking that, still in the Busch Light mindset of $14 for a 30 rack when they could buy, or $8.50 for a 6-pack. A lot of them are still going to prefer that cheap beer. But like I said, I did get them also. The taste was a bit different than normal beer, so a lot of people's opinions on craft beer, especially with like a wheat beer, is that a lot of the time it's too hoppy. It's too bitter in taste and everything, but with the addition of the orange peels and the honey, it made the beer kind of sweet, actually, instead of too hoppy. It actually paired really well with the Cascade hops. I was really impressed with this batch. I kept my notes and everything for it. I kind of want to keep making this beer, maybe as one of the initial products of the Renegade Brewing Company, as the wheat penny shandy. But it was not too hoppy, particularly sweet. So it was kind of comparable to like a White Claw or another, like a sweet. Some people compared it to like a Blue Moon of sorts as well. So it was kind of a plus for quite a few people. They had the fact that it didn't taste too beery and more sweet, similar to the sweetness that they'd get from a cider was kind of beneficial. A lot of the female buyers of the beer enjoyed that as well. So that was a selling point on that. So when you look back at the whole process, the beer brewing process is pretty time consuming. So especially with the setup that I have, it's pretty inefficient with the 5-gallon brewing system. It takes a lot to heat up and cool down that 5 gallons, especially using, like I said, using the primitive equipment that I use. So there's a lot of time spent there, and then for bottling, there's quite a bit of time in that. And as I mentioned earlier, there's quite a bit of time for marketing. So the time into this project might not have been worth the $38 that I got in return. But if I was able to scale up the operation, say I had like three or four 5-gallon buckets, so I was using 15 or 20 gallons of beer, I would be able to recoup my time a little bit more, because the time that's spent to heat up and cool down the beer is about the same, whether I do 5 gallons or I use 20 gallons, because they're all independent of each other. So there might be more profit to off at the time. Have the marketing. I might take me a little bit more time to sell off all the beer, but if I kept a reputation up and had people exposed to the beer, wanting to buy more beer, I feel that over time I'd be able to recoup some of these losses that I had from all this time that I spent marketing initially. So and when I look at the whole process as a whole, so as I talked about in my business plan, I'd be selling like 15 barrels at a time. So that's equivalent of potentially 5,000 beers instead of 50 beers. 100 times bigger than what I'm using right now. So there'd be factoring wages, time, and marketing for that as well. But I'd also be able to make beer quicker in that amount of time. So one last thing before I kind of wrap up with my reflection. So we have to remember that sales were not 100% legal in this case study situation. I don't have a license or a permit. I didn't turn any taxes. I just kind of sold it straight up, kind of under the table in a way. So if I start making more of this and trying to sell more beer, I would essentially need to be getting licensing and permit to really account for the legality of this issue. You need special licensing to sell beer in Nebraska, obviously. So if I'm going to be going further on with this, I need to get licensing to move any bit further. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. So yeah,